Nagato Uzumaki, also known as Pain, the leader of Army Gakure and founder of the Akatsuki, was one of the best villains in Naruto and had an understandable motive for becoming a villain in the world of Naruto, and, in my opinion, one of the best villains in Shippuden as a whole. However, what if I told you his backstory is so flawed he should not have become a villain at all? However, before we can get to that, we first need to talk about Nagato as a character and what we know of him.
This world shall know pain. Almighty push!
Nagato Uzumaki was born in the outskirts of Army Gakure, where he was raised by his parents, Issei and Fuso Uzumaki. At some point during the time he was being raised by his parents, Madara Uchiha transplanted his Rinnegan into a very young Nagato, without his or his parents' knowledge. At some point during the Second Shinobi World War, when Nagato and his parents were taking shelter in their home to avoid all of the fighting going on, two Konoha shinobi broke into their house in search of food. As they were trying to sneak out, they were discovered by the Konoha shinobi, which led Fuso and Issei to attack the shinobi in order for Nagato to escape, causing the two Konoha ninja to kill his parents in self-defense. Once the two Konoha shinobi realized that they were only civilians trying to protect their son, they tried to apologize to Nagato, which would ultimately lead to a grief-stricken Nagato activating Madara's Rinnegan for the first time, killing the two Leaf Shinobi. After he finished burying his parents, the newly orphaned Nagato would begin wandering in search of food and shelter. Unfortunately, due to the resources being so scarce, nobody that Nagato encountered was willing to help him, leading him to continue wandering until he would eventually succumb to his hunger and collapse. This is where Nagato's luck would begin to turn around, as he was found by Konan and Yahiko, two fellow war orphans, and they would band together, acquiring food and surviving by whatever means necessary. They bonded over shared dreams of a future where they would use their power to eliminate war, knowing that in order to accomplish this goal, they would need to learn ninjutsu and become ninja. They would approach the legendary Sannin and ask to be taught ninjutsu, while Orochimaru wanted to kill the trio. Jiraiya, due to his own guilt about his participation in the war, would ultimately decide to take the trio in, finding them a place to live and teaching them how to fish. He would refuse, however, to teach them ninjutsu. One day though, while the trio were out, they would stumble across Chunin from Iwagakure, who would proceed to attack them, and Nagato, fearing for his friends' lives, would use his Rinnegan to kill the Iwa Chunin. As Jiraiya arrived on the scene to help them, he would notice Nagato's dojutsu for the first time, and remembering the legend of the Sage of Six Paths and the prophecy he was told by the great Toad Sage that he would one day have a student with the power to save or destroy the world, Jiraiya would have a change of mind and would take on Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan as his students. Jiraiya would train the orphans for 3 years, and in this time, Nagato would easily master everything he was taught due to the Rinnegan. Once the Ame trio would be able to defeat one of Jiraiya's shadow clones in a fight, he would ultimately decide they were ready to forge out their own path and would head back to Konoha, confident they would bring reform to Army Gakure. The three formed an organization called the Akatsuki, with Yahiko as its leader, and they began advocating for the end of the war. This message ended up proving immensely popular as they gathered a lot of followers, causing news of their exploits to spread across the elemental nations, with even Jiraiya sometimes hearing of them. Sometime during the Third Shinobi World War, the Akatsuki would be approached by Obito, disguising himself as Madara Uchiha, who would offer to help them in their pursuits and show Nagato how to unlock the full potential of his Rinnegan. Yahiko, however, would refuse the offer as he suspected that Obito was planning to use them. Throughout their quest of peace, the Akatsuki's ranks would swell so much and become so well known in Army Gakure that Hanzo the Salamander, leader of the Hidden Rain village, would start to see the Akatsuki as a threat to his rule, and so he approached the Akatsuki, offering to work together with them to help negotiate with the other villagers. The next day, at a meeting to finalize the arrangements, Yahiko and Nagato were ambushed by Hanzo and his men, with the support from Danzo Shimura of Konohagakure, using Konan as a hostage, with Hanzo threatening to kill her if Nagato did not kill Yahiko. Unwilling to let Nagato live with that guilt on his conscience, Yahiko would impale himself on Nagato's kunai, using his dying breath to state his belief that Nagato would change the world. Enraged by the death of Yahiko, Nagato took Konan back from Hanzo, though his legs were badly damaged in the process. Then, Nagato summoned the demonic statue of the Outer Path, linking with it to slaughter all of Hanzo's men, though Hanzo himself escaped. After this, Nagato would sever his ties with Amigakure by slashing his village's forehead protector, as he no longer wished to be affiliated with Hanzo's village. Yahiko's death would be the trigger to convince Nagato that his philosophies for achieving peace were foolish, and that the world would never willingly end the cycle of death and hatred that it had become accustomed to operating on for so long. Only through experiencing war, with all of its losses, agony, and atrocities, directly could anyone truly desire peace. Now, with the intent to bring that level of despair to the world, Nagato would take the name of Pain. The damage he received from Hanzo's attack, combined with that from linking with the demonic statue, left him frail and immobile, leading him to create the 6 paths of pain that he could control remotely. For the Deva path, he would use Yahiko's body, since he still wanted Yahiko to lead the Akatsuki, if only in spirit. As for the other 5, they were all corpses of other miscellaneous shinobi that, unbeknownst to him, had all met Jiraiya at one point or another while they were still alive. Pain would begin to lead the Akatsuki in a new direction and secretly accept Obito's earlier offer of support. The Akatsuki began to recruit and compose itself of S-rank missing nin and start offering its services as a mercenary group to ninja villages, earning the money necessary in order to fund its long-term goals. Years later, and still loyal to their own version of Amigakure, Pain and Konan would start a civil war in the villages to overthrow Hanzo, with much of Amigakure rallying behind them, believing Pain to be a god due to his overwhelming power. The 6 paths of Pain would eventually corner and kill Hanzo, earning them control of the village. However, not before expressing Nagato's disgust in just how far Hanzo had fallen from the man he and Yahiko had admired, unable to understand how, in this self-preservation, his skill and conviction had diminished so greatly. In order to prevent anyone from challenging him, Pain would proceed to eliminate anyone with even a remote connection to Hanzo, from members of his family to even going as far as eliminating his distant acquaintances. Due to Amigakure's already secretive nature, news of Hanzo's death never left Amigakure, leaving the elemental nations to believe that Amigakure was still divided by the civil war. Ultimately, Pain would embrace the villagers' idea of him being a god and single-handedly crush any remnants loyal to Hanzo whenever they would surface. Now that we know Nagato's background, we need to take a look at his abilities, especially those given to him by the Rinnegan, as they are what poke massive holes into his backstory and character motivations. Nagato was incredibly skilled in so many types of ninjutsu, due in a large part to his Rinnegan, although he was not the eye's original owner. Being an Uzumaki allowed Nagato to wield both eyes without drawbacks, whereas Obito could barely handle a single eye, even with his various modifications and in-depth knowledge of the dojutsu. Ultimately, Nagato's skill was great enough to earn him the recognition as the third 6 paths, or the Sun in Me no Rikido. The greatest advantage given to Nagato by the Rinnegan was that it gave him access to all of the 6 paths techniques, including the Diva paths, gravitational powers such as the Bansho Tenin, the Chibaku Tensei, the Shinra Tensei, the True Chibaku Tensei, and levitation. The animal paths, menagerie of summons, including the giant drill-beaked bird, giant multi-headed dog, the giant snake-tailed chameleon, the giant panda, the giant ox, the giant rhino, the giant crustacean, the giant centipede, the other paths of pain, and even Conan. The Praetor path's limitless chakra absorption powers, the human path's control over the souls of others, including the ability to read the mind of any target and remove the soul of any target simply by touching them, the Asura path's ability to augment their own body to summon mechanized armor and various ballistic and mechanical weaponry, and the Naraka path's abilities of interrogation and restoration through the use of the King of Hell. This second ability of the Naraka path, using the King of Hell, is quite a crucial one, as it possesses the ability to repair any damage. To do so, the Naraka path has the King of Hell ingest the damaged body with its tendril-like arms into its mouth. Then, after some time, the destroyed body will emerge from its mouth, completely rejuvenated. It did this, for example, to the Asura path, after it was destroyed by Choji and Choza Akamichi. And finally, we have the one branch of Six Paths techniques, which Nagato reserved for himself, the Outer Path, which gives him abilities, such as the ability to summon and control the demonic statue of the Outer Path, producing black receivers into which he can summon his chakra. And last, but certainly not least, is the ability to use the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique to revive the dead, or, as you may know it, the Rinnegan rebirth. And unlike techniques such as the Edo Tensei, this is a true resurrection technique. Now that we know about Nagato and his abilities, let's talk about the huge problem with his backstory and motivation. We encounter our first issue when we see Hanzo holding Conan hostage in order to force Nagato to kill Yahiko. As we can see in this scene, Conan is being held hostage, arms tied behind her back and on her knees. The problem with this though, is that his Hanzo, in the beginning of this encounter, has no weapon held to her in any meaningful way, merely pointed at her. In fact, it's only for a few frames we even see him with the kunai being held near her throat. But this is long after Hanzo already threw a kunai to Nagato, telling him to kill Yahiko. Where is the issue in this, you ask? Well, that is quite simple. Nagato possesses the Bansho Tenin, or the Universal Pull, which, as the name suggests, it allows the user to manipulate an attractive force in order to pull matter towards the user, in this case, Nagato. And we see the Diva Path use this ability on several occasions to pull a singular target to himself, and as such, Nagato could have just used the Bansho Tenin to pull Conan toward himself, taking away Hanzo's ability to use her as a hostage. But Goru, how do we know Nagato could use the abilities of the Diva Path? Maybe he hadn't discovered them yet. Well, we know that he has the ability to use the Diva Path's abilities at this point in time, due to the fact that Nagato uses the Shinra Tensei, or the Almighty Push, right after Yahiko impales himself on Nagato's kunai, in order to repel the barrage of kunai thrown at him by Hanzo's men, in an attempt to kill Nagato. And it is this use of the Shinra Tensei which shows us he already has access to the Diva Path, so, by extension, we have no reason to believe that he would not have the ability to use the Bansho Tenin at this point in time. You could even argue right here that Nagato could have used the Shinra Tensei to prevent Yahiko impaling himself on the kunai, although, given that Yahiko does this in what seems like a split-second decision and it catches Nagato off guard, it seems unlikely that Nagato would have realized quickly enough that Yahiko intended to do this. I mean, sure, you could argue that Nagato froze up in a state of panic, and this is why he didn't use the Bansho Tenin to pull Conan towards him, but that seems very unlikely, seeing as by this point in time, Nagato is quite the seasoned ninja, and a very good one at that. I would also like to point out another issue I have with this scene, where Yahiko impales himself on Nagato's kunai. That being, that there was nothing in the area where Yahiko was impaled on the kunai that would instantly kill him, and yet, we see Yahiko drop like a rock instantly after getting impaled on the kunai. It should be a slow death for Yahiko, as he bleeds out from the stomach, not an instant kill, which would leave them plenty of time, based on how fast Nagato wiped out all of Hanzo's forces, to get him healed up and back to full health. You could even argue that Nagato could have just summoned the King of Hell's Mouth to fully heal Yahiko then and there. I mean, Hanzo isn't going to have any idea what it is, and will just assume that Yahiko is dead. The problem with this argument, though, is that we have no proof Nagato can even use the Naraka path at this point in time. You could also argue on top of that the King of Hell's healing ability only works on path users such as Nagato or the 6 Paths of Pain, as we've never actually seen it used for healing outside of on the Paths of Pain. After Yahiko impales himself on Nagato's kunai, like a piece of meat on a shish kebab, we get to bear witness to one of Nagato's arguably most powerful moves, after he uses the Outer Path to summon the demonic statue of the Outer Path, or the Gedo Mazo, as it is also known as, and he connects himself to it via the black chakra rods and uses the dragon soul stealing jutsu, which, in my opinion, is just a variation of the Gedo Mazo sealing jutsu we see, that is used to seal the tailed beasts, as there are some glaring similarities between the two, but that's a theory for another time. However, what we see here is that Nagato is left in a rather emaciated state with rods sticking out of his back. The leg damage was actually done by Hanzo's fire attack, but is commonly attributed to the Gedo Mazo. The problem is, this damage is something that Nagato never heals himself from, which makes absolutely no sense, because while he may not have discovered the Naraka path yet, we know that he does down the road, and the King of Hell's Mouth is stated to be able to heal any damage. In fact, we see the destroyed body of the Asura path fully healed and rejuvenated, so that leaves the implication that Nagato willingly allowed himself to be left in a weakened state, which does not fit with Pain's character. It is this summoning of the Gedo Mazo that also shows us Nagato can use the Outer Path, which gives the user the power over life and death, including the Gedo art of Rinne rebirth, meaning Nagato could have resurrected Yahiko at any point in time, since we see that it can resurrect Madara, who, although is an Edo Tensei, died many years before Naruto was even born, meaning time shouldn't be a factor in the resurrection, and we see Nagato perform that jutsu to revive everyone killed during Pain's invasion of Konoha, and that was no small amount of people, mind you, so why was it he never chose to revive Yahiko? It doesn't make sense. I can already hear the comment section saying, but Guru, the Rinne rebirth got retconned in Data Book 4 to state that it kills the user. It's a technique of self-sacrifice, like the Death Reaper seal, so Conan's statement of, if he performs that jutsu at his current chakra level, Nagato will not survive, was just an error. And to that, my response is bollocks. The first issue I see with that is that Conan recognizes the jutsu when Nagato performs it, meaning she has seen this jutsu before and seen the immense toll it puts on Nagato. Secondly, we see that when Obito uses it under Black Zetsu's control, it doesn't kill him. Well, yes, this is due to Black Zetsu keeping him alive. My issue with this, however, is that we have seen Uzumaki can survive having their Biju ripped out of them, which, need I remind you, is stated to be lethal. And this is because the Uzumaki possess incredibly strong life forces and chakra, and we've seen this effect on Nagato's life force first when he summoned the Gedo Mazo, where he became emaciated from the strain of connecting with the Gedo Mazo to use the Soul Dragon sealing technique, and then when he uses the Rinne Tensei in order to revive all of Konoha killed during his attack, causing his hair to go from Uzumaki red to white as it drains his life force away. But we see when he is resurrected as an Edo Tensei that this is seemingly reversible, as when he absorbs B's Biju chakra, he reverts from not only white hair, but also to a non-emaciated version of himself. And considering both of these actions had a significant drain on his life force, would lead me to believe that a healthy Nagato could, in theory, actually use the Rinne Tensei, due to the Uzumaki's incredible life force, and we know he has no problem accessing Biju chakra in order to revitalize himself, as by the time Konohara is being invaded by pain, the Akatsuki has 5 Biju in total. And this means that Nagato had the ability to revitalize his life force at any point in time, which, need I remind you just how broken the Uzumaki life force is. Kushina, who was weakened from childbirth and having the Kyuubi ripped out of her, was still strong enough to use her chakra chains to restrain the Kyuubi for long enough for Minato to manage to use the Soul Reaper Jutsu, and then, on top of that, she was able to survive being impaled by the Kyuubi, protecting a baby Naruto from said Kyuubi not wanting to be sealed. The only other person we've seen survive having the Biju chakra removed from them is Obito, who was stated to survive since the body of the Ten Tails, or the Gedomazo, was still left inside of him. Obito, despite all of the modifications made to him, could still barely handle a single Rinnegan. Meanwhile, a weakened life force Nagato could easily handle the two, which would lead me to believe that a healthy Nagato would easily survive using the Rinne Tensei, especially if after using it, he threw himself into the King of Hell's mouth, as Obito only survives because Ninja Jesus comes along and heals him, using some 6 paths healing technique, which means a 6 paths healing technique can cause the survival after the Rinne Tensei, so the King of Hell's mouth should be sufficient. So, in summary, Nagato's backstory and character motivation has more holes in it than Jiraiya after his fight with Pain. I hope you enjoyed this video. This one took a lot of research to make. If you would like more of these style videos, please hit that subscribe and like button, as it really helps with the algorithm more than you realize. And if you have a character you would like me to dissect like we did with Nagato, drop that character down in the comment section and maybe we'll make a video on it. Who knows? Thanks for watching.